Imagine you are a jail cell. 4 walls, 1 door, a slot at the bottom, 15 centimeters high, 45 centimeters wide. It's the food hatch. It exists so guards don't have to open the door to slide in a meal tray. No one gets through a food hatch. That's not a rule written anywhere. It doesn't need to be. It is 5:04 in the morning at Daegu's Dongbu police station. 3 officers are on duty. All 3 are asleep. In cell 11, a man named Choi Gap-bok has been awake for hours. He is 50 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall. He weighs 52 kilograms, about 115 pounds. He has spent nearly half his life in rooms exactly like this one. He reaches into his things, pulls out a small tube of skin lotion. He begins to apply it, methodically, upper body first, shoulders, chest, arms. He kneels down near the door. He looks at the slot. Then he goes through it. The surveillance footage, reviewed afterward by investigators, shows the entire sequence. 34 seconds. That's how long it takes. A detective who watched the tape would later tell reporters he moved flexibly, like an octopus. By 5:05 a.m., Choi Gap-bok is in the corridor. By 5:06, he has found a ground floor window. By 5:07, he is gone. The guards don't notice until shift change. The pillows arranged under his blanket, a trick he'd seen in a movie, bought him hours. South Korea woke up that morning to discover it had a new kind of fugitive, the Yoga Houdini. Choi Gap-bok was born in 1962 in Busan, South Korea's second city, a gritty port town where ships came and went and men disappeared into hard lives without ceremony. His father was a soldier, missing. His mother, gone too by the time it mattered. A sister, rumored to have emigrated. A brother, imprisoned. At 16 years old, Choi was arrested for theft. It was 1977. It would not be the last time. Over the next 3.5 decades, Choi compiled what Korean courts would eventually tally as 25 criminal convictions, 13 separate prison sentences, 23 years and 8 months behind bars. 10 theft charges, 4 violations of the Credit Finance Act, 3 sexual assault charges, 2 drug use charges, 1 count of fraud. A catalog, not of a monster, but of a man who found the outside world impossible and the inside world oddly familiar. And in prison, Choi practiced yoga. No one assigned it to him. There was no instructor, no mat, no incense, just time. Hours and years of unspooling time and a body he decided to turn into something extraordinary. He was not a mystic. He was not spiritual. He was practical. He bent himself because it was something to do, because the cell was small and he was smaller, because flexibility is a kind of freedom, even when you're not free. 23 years of yoga, 23 years of breathing, folding, compressing, turning a human body into something that does not obey ordinary geometry. He didn't know yet what he was preparing for. Or maybe he did. Here is something the 2012 headlines often left out. This was not Choi Gap-bok's first escape. In July 1990, Choi Gap-bok, wanted on charges of coordinating 13 counts of burglary, stealing precious metals worth 13 million won, was in police custody on a transfer bus heading to Daegu prison. The bus slowed. Traffic. Ordinary urban crawl in Dalso-gu's Songhyun-dong district. Choi was handcuffed. The windows were barred. He untied his restraints. Then he pried apart an iron bar on the window, slipped through a 20-centimeter gap, into traffic, into the city, into the air. He was caught 2 days later. The pattern was already there. An extraordinary physical gift deployed for one purpose, not violence, not cleverness, just escape. But there's a detail worth sitting with. He was always caught in 2 days. Not 2 months, not 2 years, 2 days. The escape was the masterpiece. The aftermath was the problem. Choi Gap-bok could get out of anything. He just couldn't stay out. Let's be exact about what Choi actually did, because the numbers matter. The food slot at Daegu's Dongbu Police Station detention cell measured 15 centimeters tall, 45 centimeters wide. That's roughly the size of a standard piece of paper held landscape. Most adults cannot get a single arm through a 15-centimeter gap without contortion. Choi passed his entire body, shoulders, ribcage, hips through that opening. How? 3 elements. 3 things he'd spent 23 years developing. 1. Preparation, the lotion. Before attempting the escape, Choi coated his upper half of his body in skin ointment. A simple, practical act. Reduce surface friction. Let the metal frame slide along skin instead of catching on it. A man solving an engineering problem with the tools available to him. 2. Compression, the yoga. Yoga, specifically years of intense flexibility training, allows practitioners to collapse their thoracic cage, control the position of their scapulae, and temporarily reduce the functional width of their upper body. Professional contortionists do this on stage. Choi did it on a jail cell floor at 5 a.m. At 52 kilograms, he had almost no excess body mass to work against him. 3. Control, the timing. He waited 5 days, not rushing, watching, learning the guard rotation, identifying the window. Early morning, when 3 sleep-deprived officers were at their lowest vigilance. And the decoy, the Shawshank Redemption move. Pillows shaped like a sleeping man. Low-tech, effective. It bought him hours. The Korean media would call him the Korean Houdini. The title was apt. Harry Houdini's escapes were not magic, they were engineering. Precise, practiced, methodical. Choi was the same, except Houdini was performing for an audience. Choi was performing for himself. It is now 5:07 a.m. on September 17, 2012. Choi Gap-bok is outside. The city is quiet. Most of Daegu is asleep. He moves fast. Within the hour, he has broken into a nearby residence, stolen car keys and a credit card. He does not hesitate. Old habits, activated on instinct. He drives. Police checkpoints go up across the Daegu metro area. He sees one coming, pulls over, abandons the car several hundred meters short of the barrier, gets out on foot. He heads for the mountains, specifically Mount Cheongdo, south of the city. Remote, wooded, the kind of terrain where a disciplined, fit man could survive for days. He does survive, for days. But South Korea is not a large country, and Choi Gap-bok is, by now, the most famous face in it. The Korea Times reports 57 separate sightings in the southeastern region over 6 days. Helicopters, tracking dogs, 400 officers deployed. He surfaces in Miryong, a city 30 kilometers south of Daegu. A villager spots him boarding a bus, calls it in. Choi tells the driver he has motion sickness, asks to be let off early. He disappears into Miryong's rural edges, and then a farmer named Lee finds a note in his home. Some ramen noodles are missing, a few small items, but the note reads, "I am sorry," signed, framed thief Choi. The farmer thought it was a prank, then he realized it wasn't. It's hard to know what to make of that note. Is it conscience? Is it theater? Is it a man who has spent his whole life insisting the system wronged him, even when he clearly broke its rules? Maybe all 3. On September 22, 2012, 6 days after the escape, police locate him on the roof of an apartment building in Miryong. He is hiding in a cardboard box. A man who squeezed through a 15-centimeter gap using 23 years of yoga training. Found in a box. The response from the Daegu police was fast, embarrassed, and institutional. First, they refused to release the CCTV footage. Reporters noted this immediately. Suspicion spread. Had someone helped him? Was the department covering for negligence? Eventually, they released it. The footage answered every question. No corruption, no conspiracy. Just a 50-year-old man, a tube of lotion, and 34 seconds. The department faced official criticism for the sleeping guards. Changes were made to overnight duty protocols. The food slots in detention cells across the region were quietly reduced in size. Choi was charged with the original robbery, escape, and additional theft committed during his 6 days as a fugitive. He maintained, as he had maintained throughout, that he was framed on the original robbery charge. He claimed the building owner, a man with whom he had a financial dispute over an illegally sublet warehouse, had fabricated the story. On April 10, 2013, the first trial. All charges acknowledged, 7 years in prison. Choi appealed. On October 10, 2013, the second trial. The attempted robbery charge was partially reduced due to conflicting testimony from the building owner. Sentence adjusted to 6 years. He entered a cell, this time with a smaller food slot. He was released on July 5, 2018. 11 days later, July 16, 2018, he was arrested again, this time causing a naked disturbance at a hospital, obstruction of business. The man who once moved like a ghost through a 15-centimeter gap was now making headlines by being very, very visible. The irony does not require comment.
There is a version of this story that's purely a spectacle. Man squeezes through impossible gap, nation gasps. Man caught in cardboard box. Everyone laughs. That version is real. It happened. The laughter is warranted. But here is what the spectacle papers over. Choi Gap-bok spent 23 years and 8 months in prison across his lifetime. That is not a crime sheet. That is a life consumed. A father who was missing. A mother who was gone. A brother imprisoned alongside him in different cells in different years. A sister who may have simply ceased to exist in any traceable way. He turned his confinement into craft. He practiced yoga not because he was enlightened, but because prison was all he knew and yoga was the one thing he could own entirely. The escape was extraordinary, but the extraordinary thing wasn't the yoga. It was what the yoga required. Patience, discipline, presence, the ability to endure and wait and compress yourself down to your smallest possible form, and then expand outward into the available space. Choi was good at escaping. He was not good at being free. That is not a judgment. It is an observation about a man whose entire life, every arrest, every sentence, every escape, traces back to a teenage boy in Busan who lost everyone and learned, eventually, that small spaces were the only ones he truly understood. The slot at Daegu's Dongbu police station has been modified. It is narrower now. The gap that Choi Gap-bok passed through in 34 seconds no longer exists in the same form. In a way, the only trace he left was the architecture he changed. On September 22, 2012, 6 days after his escape, police found him on a rooftop, hiding in a cardboard box. The same man who had, 1 week earlier, slipped through the impossible. He just couldn't find anywhere else to go.